them to SmackDown, maybe to mix it up a little. JBL kind of gives you that offbeat heel humor that Bobby Heenan and Jesse the Body Ventura used to give, and I kind of feel like they're starting to bring that back a little bit. The little mix of the face announcer with the little heelish announcer and a little bit of comedy relief and things along that nature. Because like my favorite tandem was Jesse the Body Ventura and Vince McMahon. But before Vince McMahon was, everybody knew he was the owner.
Yeah, those guys were great, especially when they used to do the Saturday Night Main Events together.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I used to love it. I mean, we were talking about Larry Zbyszko before. I loved him with WCW, and because he was a heel. He was always known as that heel, but then he became the voice of the company, and then he stepped up to NWO. So he was still playing that very aggressive, boisterous role, but at the same time, still being a broadcaster and still being a name for himself without being in the ring. So I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love Larry Zbyszko. He's a legend, and I'm happy to see a guy like that get into the Hall of Fame. A guy that maybe, younger fans or not hardcore fans wouldn't know who he was and his history dating back to like the 80s.
I don't know what took so long, to be honest with you. I mean, it just bad. I would love to, like I said, I would love to get Triple H on the show and just talk about the Hall of Fame. I don't even care about anything else. I just want to talk about the Hall of Fame. Because it like...
Yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say about what's the criteria and why some guys like Macho Man Savage, who had probably one of the greatest careers in WWE, took this long, and some other guys who were, not as close to touching the Macho Man's accolades were in their, first ballot, basically, for them.
It just baffles me, like, I understand that the Bushwhackers were great when they were the Sheep Herders in AWA, but then they came to the WWE as the Bushwhackers, and they were basically tag team jobbers, but yet they're going into the Hall of Fame because of what they did in the AWA. If that's the case, why did it take them so long to get Larry Zbyszko in? And if that's also the case, why the hell is Coco Beware in the Hall of Fame?
That's a question only he can answer.
I mean, it's really baffling, and and I feel that if he'll be the biggest hypocrite on the planet if he turns around and he inducts himself, Shawn Michaels, and Sean Waltman as members of D-Generation X, and doesn't induct Chyna because of her porn background, but at the same time, Sean Waltman was in the porn.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't like porn?
Apparently, the T-shirt buying children that makes up the WWE universe.
Yeah, well, you know what? As a father to two T-shirt buying children, and I tell you, the last time I took my son there, I spent $75 on T-shirts. I'd like to see certain, guys that I like going into the Hall of Fame, and I was a big Chyna fan and still am.
She's the only female to hold a major championship as the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. That in itself has more credentials than Sean Waltman, so she should be in the Hall of Fame.
Agreed.
Before we get back to your future and your present, I just want to get your opinion on something that just happened recently, not the Rey Mysterio incident. I don't really want to touch that. The fans.
It was just a tragedy, man.
It was, absolutely.
None of us can explain, and whoever's saying that Mysterio did it, you know what?
Yeah.
That could have happened to me. It could have happened to anybody. Wrestling is not ballet.
Nope.
Wrestling is physical. We don't know, and first of all, rest in peace to Paraguayo. I was a big fan of his dad. While I watched Triple A growing up, in the mid-'90s, early 2000s, his dad was one of those guys that always did blood, and I was a fan of his. So, my condolences to the family from, wrestling community, being what we are. We should all be tight-knit. But, that could have happened to anybody.
Could have happened to the referee.
Could have happened to anybody.
It could have happened to the referee. Could have happened to
Japan
anybody.
2 years ago, and he actually died from taking a move. And nobody was blaming the guy who gave him the back suplex off the second rope.
Right.
Why are you hating on Ray now? You know what I'm saying?
Because everybody sees this video, they don't have all the information, they assume. That's why I don't want to touch it as a story yet. I want to make sure all the details and the facts are out there for me to actually absorb. And, then I'll get into it, because I think it's only fair and respectful to the family to not really get into it until, everything's out there and available.
Yeah, of course.
But one of the stories that was all over Facebook was, it was a group of 7 friends that get dressed up as all the old 80s WWE gimmicks, and they went to a house show, spent a half hour at the show, and then were confronted and asked to remove their costumes, or they were going to lose their front row seats. Did you see that? I
did hear about that, and I do have an opinion on that. As a man who was a fan, a lifelong fan, I think if I wouldn't have followed the path of getting into the wrestling business, I probably would have been a fan like that dressed up as one of my favorite guys and sat in the crowd. The excuse that they give to me is lame, the HD and this and that, it distracts the viewer that's watching from TV and so on and so forth. I think it's just lack of confidence in their product.
Right.
That they think that a bunch of fans are going to steal heat from the wrestlers in the ring. I think if you have confidence in your product and your performers, you don't really take into account what the fans are doing. And it didn't look like those guys were going to cause any trouble or try to hijack the show in any way, like XPW did a few years ago, sitting in the front row of ECW.
Right.
So, I don't think that they should have been thrown out or be told what to do. I did hear that they were taken care of and given tickets to the next show and given, free merchandise and stuff. But still, you're taking away the fans' freedom of expression, and that's just
absolutely. I mean, you seen a picture of them after they, got dressed into Uso shirts and John Cena shirts and Sin Cara shirts. They look so dejected and like somebody let the air out of the balloon, and I felt terrible. They traveled there, spent $125 a ticket, well over $1,000 in tickets, and they're told that they have to move. Why didn't they just switch them to the other side off the hard cam and just put someone else that they switched with on the hard cam?
Yeah, it's just sad, man. I think if you're spending that kind of money and you love the product so much that you're willing to go out into the street dressed as an old school wrestling legend, I think they should have just given them a break. I think it's just ridiculous.
I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, you go to growing up in the 80s, you said you're a Hogan fan. I mean, I watched Randy Savage win the title in the tournament, WrestleMania 4, and I could tell you there was like 3 fans dressed as Macho Man Randy Savage within the first 3 rows of the ring. Wasn't a problem then. Why is it a problem now? Why are you told when you get to the ring, when you get to the arena, you're not allowed to have a CM Punk poster, and if you get caught starting a CM Punk chant, you get thrown out?
I don't know, man. I think that it's becoming almost like communist wrestling, and I'm not a fan of that.
No, and this is why I am a fan of independent wrestling. I like my Monday Night Raw. Gives me something to do on Monday. I like my pay-per-views for the most part. It gives me an excuse to invite people over and eat junk food. It's like the Super Bowl. But
I don't need an excuse to eat a dozen or 5 dozen chicken wings, man.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, come on. Who doesn't need an excuse, to eat jalapeno poppers for dinner?
Oh.
But I enjoy independent wrestling. I love going to these little close-knit halls and lodges and, eating terrible French fries and hot dogs and drinking a flat soda and just taking it all in because you're so close to the action. You feel a part of everything that's going on, and it's just so much more fun than going to a WWE show, sitting 75 rows away for $100, and you get distracted by the littlest things and you miss half the show because you're on your cell phone or something.
Yeah, those tickets are very overpriced, and like I said, the guy who takes his son to wrestling shows, my son, I think, has a better time going to, he has been in the last, year, he has been to a few UWA Elite shows.
Yes.
He went to a couple PWS, he went to JCW, and he had a great time at all of them, so...
Well, all the ones you just named put on great shows. JCW puts on a great show. UWA Elite is a very young and up-and-coming brand. They're doing very well. PWS, they speak for themselves. They got their own, TV segment going. I mean, you can't say anything more than that. I know you've also been in the past parts of Superstars of Wrestling. And,
I love working for that company. Robert Banner's a stand-up guy. I know you had him on last week, and I'm just glad to have been and continue to be part of that company. I hope, like I said, to extend into non-wrestling roles in the future, and that would be one of the places I'd like to be.
And it's it is, people don't understand it. They don't understand this business. They don't get that. Yes, stupid things happen. People make bad decisions, but you should not be burying these people for the rest of their lives. You give them a chance to come back. Obviously, the locker room came back. So, if the locker room has faith in a promoter, then the fans should have faith in a promoter.
I agree.
Okay, so let's get back to some recent news that surrounded you. I attended a show in East Bumble F, New Jersey, for On Point.
Yes.
In the middle of nowhere. To find out, very upsetting, that Life Louie was not going to make it.
Yeah.
And a ridiculously packed show. I mean, there was at least, I want to say, 80 to 90 people standing watching this show. And when they made the announcement that, for medical reasons, you were not going to be there, I felt a little air let out of the balloon in that room. And not that you let anybody down, but that shows how much love these fans have for you, that they were more upset the fact that it was a medical reason than the fact that you weren't going to be there, period.
Yeah, and that's the way I've always been. I've always been the type of guy to take time out to spend time with the fans during and after a show, to speak to them, to hang out with them. Hey, man, if it wasn't for the fans, I wouldn't have beaten my body up the way I did for 18 years, man.
So, what happened? Was it a doctor visit that day or a prior day?
A couple of days before the show, an appointment came up. I had already scheduled an appointment to get my brain checked out. I had done a match for JCW against Brandon Kirk. He's one half of the Rogues tag team with Jeff Cannonball, two of my favorite guys in the business to work with, two young up-and-coming guys.
Mm-hmm.
They are the UWA Elite Tag Team Champions, by the way. I did a street fight with Brandon Kirk. Took some real bad headshots, old school DVD VCR upside the head.
Ooh.
And I'm not talking about one of those that gets emptied out. I'm talking about legit, full body weight, full weight of the machine onto my head a few times, some, punches, all that kind of stuff. And I had some headaches after the match and so on and so forth. And, luckily for me, my wife had insurance, and I went to the doctor. They did a CT scan. And what they found was that after 18 years of getting hit in the head, they found a lot of damage to the frontal lobe of my brain, the temporal lobe of my brain, lots of spotting, lots of scarring, lots of scar buildup in between the wall of the cranium and the cerebellum, and just a lot of, technical mumbo-jumbo, medical jargon nonsense. Basically, I've had a lot of traumatic brain injuries that, through the years didn't affect me. I don't know if it was because of adrenaline, toughness, stupidity. I don't know what it was.
Stubbornness.
But, stubbornness. I never let it bother me. And the doctor said with that, coupled with the fact that my father has dementia, and it's in my family, and it's hereditary, that kind of stuff is hereditary according to them, the odds of me being brain dead and not remembering anything by the time I'm 50 are greatly exaggerated if I continue to get hit the way I've been hit. Me being the type of guy that I am, I would never want to cheat the fans, and it comes back to the fans, and give them a half-assed Life Louie. I'm a guy that, I never put my heads up for a chair shot. I never blocked anything. I never did anything like that. I always try to make these death matches and hardcore matches I participate in look for what they are, and that's realistic, bloody events. And, after 18 years, like I said earlier, I have no regrets. But it's in my best interest to not continue to get hit the way I've been hit. And like I said, I don't want to water myself down.
Right.
So, as a precaution, I'm going in for another test at the end of April. And that test will determine